Welcome to the latest episode of Toppy One, the only podcast you will ever need. 6 of one and Bill of the other. Today, this is an episode devoted to, it's specifically open world video games. Yes? This is what you've got a beef about. Let's get this clear right now. This is an episode where you have
brought the beef to the table.
That's right. Put it right on the table with the fixins.
You've brought it to the table with the fixings.
Yes, the fixins, as they say in the southern United States.
What the hell does that mean? What are you talking about? What's the fixings?
The fixins. It's everything else. You know, you don't just put a steak on your table and go, here, and just throw it down. You got the fixins. You got all the extraneous stuff around it, man. Come on. I don't know. Maybe you do in England. Maybe you just eat a steak. Maybe do you eat it with your fists? You just, you know.
Put it on the table. Pummel it. And just throw it in your face. More.
We don't do that here. We just eat steak on its own.
Horseradish sauce. Do you know what? I never had raw horseradish sauce for so long because I thought it must have an element of horse and or radish in it. Turns out there's no horse.
Yeah, they
no
mutilate
horse
the
involved.
horse and they mix it with some radish.
Yeah, but
the mutilated horse is what gives it the kick.
Oh, where's kadum? Have I got a kadum? No, I haven't got a kadum. Well, I'll edit one on. Bill, explain the general topic that we're going to be talking about today.
This is about respecting our time. Oh, first I must do a disclaimer. If you like open world video games and you disagree with everything I say, that's okay. We are allowed to have different likes and dislikes. I have played a bunch of open world video games, so I like them, but I don't think they respect your time. And I think that the new way of designing them is not really that fun anymore, and yet it's addicting. And so that's I wanted to talk about the line between I'm doing it because I'm addicted to it, but am I really enjoying myself here? And I know you had recently played Elden Ring. I chose Assassin's Creed Valhalla, although I've played all the Assassin's Creed games just because I figure it's a game a lot of people have played. And although I haven't played Elden Ring, I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I thought it would be good to sort of compare how they do different things in the open world. And what is a good balance? What makes it, what are some of the things we enjoy about these things? And what are some of the things that may be a little nefarious with the fixings?
I did play the first Assassin's Creed. I think it was on the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
And so the very first one.
So to explain to you and what we're going to go into, they sort of changed the formula. So they used to be sort of like, if you remember, Splinter Cell and sort of stealth-like games.
Yeah.
And it was very much, you'd basically have a city. Now, there were different ones, but you'd be in a city and it would be stealth, and they would have quests and things, but it was much more like a single-player game. And then with Assassin's Creed Origins, they started doing basically a copy. Have you ever played any of the Witcher games? Something like that. Well, so you've got an open world, you've got a lot of question marks on the world, and they can be quests that you have to follow, and then the more you do, the bigger the world. And you have story quests, side quests, that basic setup.
So I suppose what you've just said there just sounds a bit like the kind of Grand Theft Auto 4 was the last sort of thing I played like that. Like an open world with lots of quests that get triggered when you do something.
And I would say Grand Theft Auto is one of the best companies to do it. They've gone more to multiplayer now, and that's a whole nother discussion. But as far as single-player open world, Grand Theft Auto probably does it among the best that there is. And I could go into some of the differences a little later between what they do and what Ubisoft has been doing lately with Assassin's Creed. And I'm talking about Assassin's Creed, but I think the things that Ubisoft are doing are things that are in a lot of different games now.
Yeah, I think we're going to bring up a point. Probably the next button I press is going to bring up the first point. But just before we get onto that, I think what the general gist of this whole episode is going to be like a meme I saw about Elden Ring, where Elden Ring has a very limited HUD. It's like nothing going on. It doesn't tell you anything. And then someone had taken the Elden Ring screenshot and superimposed what it would be like if Ubisoft had done it. And it was just icons and maps and things everywhere and do this, do that. And the whole screen was cluttered with absolute nonsense. And I think when we talk about sort of the first point we're going to go into, which we've titled bloat and sort of fetch quests in video games.
So I wrote
Explain this one, Bill.
Yeah, so I wrote this bit, and anyone who's played an open world game will relate to this.
My wife's sick. Can you grab 3 eldenberries, 7 duckbills, and 4 reindeer hearts so I can make a potion to hear her?
And so a lot of times in these open world games, the big selling point is, look at how huge our world is. We have the biggest world, and it's going to take you 160,000 hours to finish it. And then someone is going to go, well, the last game was 140 hours. I don't know if I'm getting my $70 worth. Now it's 70.
Yeah.
So how they do this is not, they don't really craft all of these great things that you can do. They take one gameplay loop, and if you have a copy and paste button on your computer, they go copy paste, and they just paste it 100 times. And it's nefarious, sort of. Nefarious is the wrong word, but it's how they do it is when you first start the game, they go, look, it's 6 question marks. And you go, 6 isn't bad. And I fall into this where when I start playing an open world game at the very beginning, I'm like, I'm going to take my time. The graphics are beautiful. I'm going to walk to places. And I'm going to go, and you go to the question mark. And then usually they'll have a cutscene for the first time you do it. And you're like, okay, this is kind of fun. This is cool. And you're doing all these different things. And as soon as you're done those 6, they go,
here's the real world. That was the trainer one.
And there's 16,000 of them. And they're all the exact same. So it's like Assassin's Creed Origins, and they have like where you go into these forts and you have to like go in and kill all the guys. It's literally the same, and it might be different. There might be 10 guys instead of 5 guys. They might be more difficult. But I like story. I like mood, and there's just no thought for that. So it's sort of
A mile wide and a pond deep.
you know, it's like it's very wide, and there's not much depth there. And it can be very overwhelming, but what I think is sort of nefarious about it is it gets you addicted because it feels good checking off those question marks. And I don't know about other people. When I'm playing, I can't leave an area unless I've checked out everything. And then you get to a point where you're playing it, and now I'm not walking, I'm running, I'm just trying to get it done as fast as I can. And I'm going, what? Is this fun? Because you feel obligated to do it, and there's a part of your brain that has to, and they're well aware of this. But I don't know that I'm actually enjoying the experience, and something developers always say that I feel like you should run if they go,
We want the player to make their own story.
that means they haven't bothered to do it. And so you have these 5 gameplay loops, and that's your story.
It's interesting because I think you've summed up right open world games there. Like probably all of them. I've just started playing, right? I put it up on the screen now. I've just started playing. I bought it on the Switch. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Because everyone said it's the new amazing RPG. And one of the very first things that's happened in it is some bloke in some space base came up to me in the game and said,
Hi, yeah, I just need, something's gone wrong with the thing I'm doing over here. Here's a card. If you could just collect these items off this card and bring them back to me, then it will sort it out well for me.
So a very early quest is walking through the landscape, trying to find like a special kind of corn and something over there. And they're all flashing on the landscape, and you walk around, and then you get 7 of them. And it goes,
saying that,
your card. Oh.
Just you saying that sounds so fun. I want to stop the podcast and go.
Oh, it's like, so, and then you bring them back to him, and he goes, and like you just said, cutscene, whoopee-doo, thanks for that. And then a tutorial box comes on the screen and says, well done. This is an example you've just completed of a quest type that you're going to encounter many times through this game. And it says, and there's a whole back screen where you get these collectible cards, and each card has a load of items on it. And then you've got to collect the items to fulfill the cards. And I just thought, what a weird way of hiding in back screens this constant need to just collect stuff in these games.
And I don't want to go into it too much, but there's microtransactions, which people have talked to death, so I'll be very brief about it. But because I'll just talk about it in terms of why they design the worlds the way they do. It's because the longer it's going to take you to accomplish something or to level up, the more likely you are to go, just here, let me pay you, and then I don't have to do that anymore. And so they purposely make it meandering. But to go on another tangent, what's funny about the side quest, you can always tell it's a side quest because what they'll do is the main quest, it'll be this beautiful video and they're playing like the score and they're showing you, oh, you're your guy. And then it's a side quest. It's like a 2-pixel NPC. And I always think this is funny in video games when your guy is like hand animated. Like some developer took 6 months and they're like, they have yours blown up and they're just like dotting the one part of your nose so you can see like the hair follicle, you know?
Yeah.
And then the NPC's like, I need you to get to elderberry, and their mouths like aren't you know, they're like, I need you to get to elderberry, you know. Like,
do you know what? Funny enough, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which I've just started, is exactly what you've just said. There's beautiful, sweeping, majestic camera moves through the landscape, and the characters are animated and cinematically talking to each other with all their different voices. And then when I encounter this bloke in this space camp, he's a static figure with boxes, text boxes you have to click through.
He's got no lighting on his face.
As soon as you click through text boxes, you know, it's one of these bloody collectible side quests.
Well, Ubisoft is even funnier because they did away with the presentation altogether. They're like, you know what? We're not even going to give you the cutscene when you first go in. So they just use the in-game camera, and it's just like very sloppily done. And Ubisoft, the audio for the last one, they compressed so much to fit all the bloat that they said, okay, should we have 100 copy-paste quests or good audio? And they were like, fuck the audio. So the audio just sounds terrible. And they never fixed it. Wow. People, like the day the game came out, people were like hopeful. They were like, wow. And the soundtrack's great. So they were like, hey, the sound is really off. And Ubisoft goes, thanks, here's our new microtransaction. And then it's been like 5 years and they still haven't fixed it. I love when games do the here you do it camera. So it's like, it's a side quest and it's the guy's talking, but you could move the camera and look at the top of his head, and you're trying to frame it to make it look
Remember the
good.
first time? Remember the first time I ever encountered that was about 1999, 2000, and it was the original Xbox and the very first Halo, and the game starts like that. You're kind of the guy's going, oh hi Master Chief, and nice to, and you can look around, yeah. So technically you can look over there while he's talking, right? So in real life that would be you talking to me and me doing that. Mm-hmm. And whenever those cameras let you do that, Half-Life as well. Whenever those cameras let you look around when someone's talking to you, I always make sure I don't look at them. So in real life I would be just like this.
Could you imagine watching like Goodfellas and Martin Scorsese's like, here, just put the camera where you want. This is the pivotal scene. Why don't you, do you want to look at the bar while he's stabbing the guy? Here, you can do it. It's fine.
It's a funny, I can imagine the first person who came up with the idea was like, this is amazing. We can get all this narrative, what's the word? It's in Austin Powers, there's a character called it. Basil Exposition. The character Basil Exposition.
Yes.
And he comes up and he just gives a little bit of what's going on in the world. Oh, yeah. And just to move the plot forward, and he's actually in Austin Powers, he's called Basil Exposition. And you find that in these games where
these games,
they've come up with a way of having exposition, whereas in the old days, in Final Fantasy VII, you'd have to just click through it. But now you can move the camera. And somehow that makes the 20-minute exposition better because you can turn your back or wander over into the corner of the room and take a piss, and that makes it better.
I love how games do exposition. So a lot of times in movies they do it too, but they try to hide it. Like my favorite way is Mercurio. We've been friends for 15 years, right? You know.
I knew exactly what you were going to say. Yeah, we've been friends since you lived in that old town. 30 miles that way.
Yeah, so that's how they try to hide it.
15 years ago.
It's like this ain't like that adventure we had some years back when you learned how to fish by the creek that we learned, you know. And games, there's no pretense. Like a guy will just walk up to you in a game, like you said, you're moving the camera, and it'll go,
The Battle of Mordor was 120 years ago when the forces of good...
And then you're just clicking through text, and he says it for like a half hour, you're like, what, okay. And then it's like...
And then that is how...
And then as he gets done, you're like, oh, I'm good, I'm done with that. And there's 15 like branching dialogue where you're like, hey, what did you say about Mordor? And he's like...
Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's 15 other things.
The branching, right? Although we're actually... We're skipping around bits here, right? But I'll put it on the screen for those who are watching now, right? Because something you said about the branching dialogue there, right? Branching dialogue in video games. Whenever it happens, I hate it because but you can probably point out some that this isn't truthful, but on the whole, there's only one real route through.
Yeah.
And if you click the wrong thing, he'll just say something, and then you'll still end up having to click the right thing. Do you know what I mean? It'll give you four options. There's only one worth doing.
I agree completely. And so, from my understanding, and I was never a D&D guy, but this started in D&D, and D&D would be you're sitting around a table, and someone has really well thought out your choices and they present something, and when you make a choice, they then design the whole game around your choice. And I'm sure that can be very rewarding. What a video game does, and my first experience with it was like Mass Effect by BioWare, and what would happen would be your two choices would kind of be like this. It would be like,
oh, I will go and get the kitten out of the tree.
Or,
let's chop its head off and put it in the microwave and burn it.
you know, there's no like subtlety of like, you know, the middle choice is like, you all can die. And with Mass Effect, what happened is what people really loved about it is romance choices. And they had like sex scenes. But then it got, by the last BioWare game, you'd read the forums and people were like angry they can't the chair. Like they'd be like, why can't I the chair? And then they have to, and then everyone is hitting, if you play a BioWare game now, there'd be like old woman that in an old video game, she'd be like, here is the poultice to heal your old wounds, sir. And now in the new video game, she's like, hey, nice you know. You have to bleep that out. But because it's just
so they chose a kind of sex romance route which hadn't really been done before. That was their thing, was it?
It had been done before, but there was a big controversy at the time because they would show you cutscenes. And at the heart of it, I can see where it's a good idea where if you give them 5 choices and you pick who you're most comfortable with and include all sexualities, I'm for that. I think people should be able to escape. But it just got too much. And so to go back with just choose your own adventure, I wrote how many of the greatest novels of all time are choose your own adventure. And there are people that maybe can do this, but for me, whenever it's choose, I always have to get the best ending. So I will look up, like, what should I do? Because no one wants to play 500 hours of a game, and at the end they go, well, you f***ed that up. Everyone you love is dead. Thanks for playing our game. So, and if you think of, like, Romeo and Juliet, if Romeo and Juliet was a video game, they'd survive at the end. And so there's a reason people are authors, and I like to write. And I want to hear the person who's passionate about this story. The Last of Us 2 came out, and it was not choose your own adventure, and people were very upset by some of the story choices. And I think that's a great thing because the author was very passionate. They had an idea, and some of the things I like the most, it doesn't go the way I would have chosen. You know, bad things happen, and that's sort of what really is moving about a story. And when you're choosing your own, it just becomes wish fulfillment to, I think, too much of a degree.
I agree with that. There's something to be said for the fact that the person who designed the game in the first place had a narrative, like a reason for making it. And then we've had sandboxes over the years, haven't we?
Yeah,
sandbox games.
Well, and then beyond that, so say the new Assassin's Creed, you play 500 hours, you beat the game, they come out with DLC that takes place in a different place. So you play it, but they don't want to cut out players, so they go, you can play this anywhere in the story you want. So I've played 500 hours, and then all of the character progression, gone. Because God forbid somebody just bought the game and they want to play it right away. And they did this for like 5 DLCs. So it's this weird state of no one... The best open world games, in my opinion, change. So you do something, and everyone reacts differently to you after you've done it. Because, like in real life, you've made change. But because they want to include choice now with it, what happens is nothing can change because the guy next door who has completely different sensibilities to you might have played it all early and doesn't care. So suddenly, you know, there's no character progression inherent too, which to me bothers me as someone who loves story.
I've never played downloadable like DLC content for any game ever.
Really?
So I don't really know. So I've never really understood when you can buy the DLC for something. I'm never really sure how it works. Does it just like open up another area that you just get to via the main game?
Well, and the way it was done for years is there's different kinds of DLC. Sometimes it's like packs where you get different outfits and stuff. The best kind, the kind that I like the most, would be you beat a game and they go, the story continues. Here's a whole nother area with different characters. They address what you did before. Those Mass Effect games, you'd go somewhere else and people would know what you did. And a lot of times the developer would go, it's best to play this after mission 3, or it's best to play this after you finish the game. And it would make sense. And you could see the cut marks sometimes in the game where it should include it. It's like when you watch a prequel and they have a grand adventure that's never mentioned because they didn't write it when they made the main story. But they tried their best to make it as seamlessly as they could. Whereas now they just don't even bother. It's just like, well, yeah, it happens. Everything happens at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. I think they're going to bring out DLC for Elden Ring. I'll just talk about Elden Ring for a minute, because that is a game I put 150 hours into, right? The first From Software game I've ever played. And they're like got a reputation for being rock solid hard. No, not the first one. Not
sexually.
Not sexually.
I'm sorry.
That's more Leisure. Do you remember Leisure Suit Larry?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Elden Ring, right? So no, I did actually play Bloodborne, I think, on the PS3, 4, but I gave up with it pretty early on and gave the game away. But anyway, so I got Elden Ring thinking I probably wouldn't like it, but everyone had banged on about it. And the interesting thing about Elden Ring, there's a couple of things, but it's an open world game that is so chock-a-block full of stuff that there's no what do you call it, like transactions. There's no like microtransactions in it. It's just like you pay 60 quid or whatever it is, 50 quid, 60 quid, and you've got a game, and it's all self-contained, and it kept me at it, so to speak, Leisure Suit Larry, for 150 hours. And the one thing I would say, like, if I had to say, there's loads, right? Okay, before I go on about good things about Elden Ring, can I say cooking in games, right? It's another one. Oh my God, there's stuff. You can't walk 10 paces without being able to pick up herbs and shit all over the floor.
Yeah, let me interrupt you real quick and I'll let you continue. I hate, because like they're coming up with a new game and they're like, guess what, guys? We got crafting. And I'm like, who likes crafting?
Yeah, crafting rather than cooking. Yeah, crafting. Yeah, no, but Bill, so 150 hours, right, in Elden Ring, right? You can collect hundreds of things, right? Which I did. I still click on everything. My inventory on Elden Ring, the pocket's size of blue whales, stomachs.
I get afraid to spend anything because what it is, it's like I've collected all this stuff and they're like, here's a potion that you might need, and I'm like, well, do I need it now? Should I use it now? And then I end up just leaving them and I never use them anyway.
I collected everything. I had thousands and thousands of different herbs and different stones and different this and that. I never crafted anything. I completed the game, right? So I completed Elden Ring, and I went on after I completed it for longer. I never crafted anything. By the end of the game, I had about 10,000 different weapons, of which I only ever used 2. I had every herb under the sun, which I didn't know what any of them did. There was stuff everywhere. My pockets were full of shit. I just wanted to get out of the way. Crafting. Whoever invented crafting. What was the first game that had collectible things that you could do things with? Whoever that person was should be, I was going to say something horrible then. They should be slapped.
Do you know why? What's the hotkey for paste? They're just like, Control P. Control P. Like, that's the guy, like in the old games, it's like, okay, so we got to get him over the wall and he's got to stealthily go. And now they're going, Control P, milkweed, Control P, milkweed, Control P. And that's because it's taking up your time. So now you can say, I spent 600 hours doing something I hated, but there's part of your brain that goes, oh, you didn't get that milkweed you just passed. And it bothers you. So you go do it.
I did it. I was picking up herbs. I was picking up herbs. It got, when I was about 80, 90 hours in, right, to Elden Ring, I knew that I was never going to craft anything. I knew it. I was never, ever going to craft things, right? But I still picked up every blade of grass. I still picked up every little nut. I picked up all these things. And my inventory at the end of the game, when you look through, whatever the maximums are for every herb, I've got them. So I've got 99, and there's 1,000 different ones. And I've got, I've got full every single one.
Even worse, you ever have this where you're doing that and you don't know what any of it's for? And then they go, inventory's full. What are you going to delete? And you're like, what? I don't know what to delete. What am I going to need? What should I? And then you delete it and they go, oh, you deleted the milkweed. That level 7 quest to save your love interest. You need that. And there's only one milkweed in the game.
Yes. That is exactly what happens. Now, Elden Ring's an interesting one, right? Because I remember that the first time that affected me, that I really remember, was the original Resident Evil game where you'd collect some things and then your pockets were full. So you'd have to go and find like some sort of trunk or something to put the things into. And that what you're talking about is right. The minute you have to decide between this milkweed or this orange version of the milkweed, like, oh, which one do I put down? You know, I think Resident Evil had crafting.
Oh no!
It wasn't Resident Evil, was it?
Coming next, the Botanist DLC. Sometimes I'll be playing a game and I'm like, God damn, I wish they had more milkweed here. I'll be sitting upstairs. I'll be sitting upstairs with my family, you know, watching my kids grow up, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I sure be like picking me some milkweed.
Bloody milkweed. But Elden Ring. So the things I like about Elden Ring, because you talked about Assassin's Creed, right? Elden Ring's odd in that it doesn't really have, there's nothing on the screen. There's just a north, south, east, west thing, compass along the top. And the map doesn't display anything at the start. You have to collect fragments. And even when you collect the fragments of the map, unlike Halo Infinite that I played recently, where the map just displays everything. Go here, go here, go here. Ah! The Elden Ring map is nothing. It's like holding a piece of paper that someone's actually drawn. There's some hills on it and some things you can't quite make out. So you think, oh, maybe I'll go over there and have a look at that. So I think Elden Ring, in terms of the open world, is done correctly. It feels like a mystery. You don't know what's going on. There's a lot of variety in it. And it's not just going from here to here, at least at first, not just going from here to here to here to here. The downside of Elden Ring, because all you ever really hear is upsides, the downside of Elden Ring is the story. Let's be polite about it. The story is shit. Because no one has a clue. No one has a clue what's going on. And you'll get the defenders, and there's millions of videos on YouTube, of which I watched every single one, where you construct what you think the story is, but From Software don't really give you any idea. And I have the feeling this might be the opposite of some of the games you're talking about, where they've got a strong narrative where you trigger something and it tells you something, and there's dialogue and things. Elden Ring is very much
Well, there's a balance. There's a balance. So The Witcher 3, something The Witcher 3 did right, is they had all these same quests, but what they would do is, say you come to a beach and you've got to destroy all these monsters. A lot of games will just have you destroy the monsters and you pick up some jewels that you can use to buy armor. Witcher 3 would just put a little note by it, and it would go, I'm off to leave me mom, but I think I'm going to stop by this beach before I do. Hope these monsters don't eat me. But it's enough that it adds an element of you think you're in a living world.
That is Elden Ring-like. That is Elden Ring-like.
And I think
to Elden Ring's credit, it does give you fragments of real life, of the real life world, for you to piece together, like it probably would be in real life. No one's going to really walk up to you and say, hi, nice to meet you. And then Basil exposition.
Yeah. Well, and no one writes. I like to write notes. Like if I'm late at the grocery store, I take a piece of paper and I go, I just meant to be here for 5 minutes. Hope I can get gas. And I just put the note on the ground. I think that I like the way that sounds better than putting, because a lot of times what happens, like in Assassin's Creed, is they'll go, a world of discovery. What that means is there's 5 things. There's 5 different places that you can do 5 different things. So it's like there's a cave in woods, there's a cave in ice, there's a cave in the desert. All the caves look the same, and when you go into the cave, you do the same thing every time. So it's not really discovery. There is an overarching narrative, but even now, they're kind of paying less and less attention to that. They're like, don't you want to just do the same thing over and over? Where, from what I've gathered from Elden Ring, is there's some difference. Like, even though you have to only have a limited gameplay loop, like those notes, and there's ways to make it feel unique that I feel, from what I've heard, Elden Ring does better than I think the Assassin's Creed games do.
I think Elden Ring is being defended a bit too strongly by everybody, because I think there's what you just said about Assassin's Creed. There's elements of that in Elden Ring, right? Because although it's a vast open world and it doesn't tell you anything, from the beginning, you can walk in any direction and you can do the alleged story in a completely different order. You can mess up your storyline for your own playthrough by defeating bosses that the makers didn't intend you to defeat first, kind of thing.
And every open world game that I feel like that. I'm doing the story and something happens and I go, that doesn't make sense, and I realize, that was supposed to happen before.
Elden Ring's a little bit like that,
yeah.
But it's also got like different gameplay loops in it, right? So it's got the open world bit, you ride around on a horse, that's all fine, or goat, you ride around on a goat, that's fine. And then they got like underground dungeons, which are all basically the same, with a slight difference. And once you've done them once, you kind of go into another one and think, oh God, I've got to do this again. You've got variations of the same loop. Yep. Again and again and again and again. And there's definitely a feeling, even in Elden Ring, which is probably the best. I would say it might be the best game I've ever played. I'd give it 10 out of 10. So I'm not dissing it here. It's a great game. But there's an element, I hate to say it, of what you started off by saying, right? Yeah. There's an element of copy and paste. Yeah. This is heralded as the greatest game of all time, 10 out of 10, Elden Ring. And then when I go into a dungeon for the 30th time, and it's the same coloured it's the same copy and paste walls, the same little goblin guys, and you just think, oh my God, could we have had a better game if we cut all this shit out and had it only 40 hours long?
Exactly.
Right? Cut all that rubbish out. Stop going around collecting all the herbs and that, and just have it concise from here to here. Would it be better?
It's drive the same way to work over and over again, the game. And instead of having 100 side quests, give me 10 that are really cinematic, thought out. So they have these single player games. Uncharted, Last of Us are examples. Where they're called on the rails. And what that means is they've handcrafted the experience, and there's usually quick time events, but you have a gameplay loop, and then they'll have stuff that you'll be in a car chase, or the building will explode and you've got to run out of it. And it breaks up the monotony. But now it's like a dirty word. If you hear it, if they write about it, they go, oh, this one's on the rails. And what's hilarious is Tomb Raider, they remade Tomb Raider, and it was basically something you could finish in a weekend, a lot of quick time, but it was fun for what it was. It was, you play it, it's new, it's exciting, you finish it, you're done. And then they said, you know what we should do? And in the newest Tomb Raider, you literally stop at one point, and the 2-pixel NPCs are like, Laura Croft, could you get me some duck bills and reindeer hearts for my thing? And she goes, yes, I can. And it's like, I want to know who is at home going, oh, good, this was too action-packed and fun. Let's get some monotony in here. And like the production value goes way down. It takes you completely out of the game. You can't take it seriously anymore.
Have they really done that with Tomb Raider? I mean, there must have been an element of when I think about the original Tomb Raider, there was still an element, wasn't there, of if you wanted to open a door, go and find the 2 halves of a talisman or whatever. So there'd be like fetch quests, sort of. But are you saying they've got in there more fetch quests and an element of crafting almost?
Oh, crafting is in every Tomb Raider game.
Oh no!
How are you going to get your arrows? Oh, and all.
Oh no! Don't stop. That's in Elden Ring as well. Making special arrows.
Yes, exactly. And if they just said, "Hey, guess what? Just suspend your disbelief. Here's infinite arrows. Have fun." How much more enjoyable would that be? And you could still make the game challenging, knowing that you had infinite arrows. You can adjust to that. Instead, I go to work. I wake up. I make sure my kids are good. They get off, and then I go to work, right? And I do the what do they call that in Office Space? The TPS reports. I make sure the TPS reports are in on time. Drive home, make sure the kids are tucked in. They go to bed. You have your dinner. Oh, gotta mow the lawn, gotta rake the leaves, gotta do whatever. And then I sit down and I go, oh, I gotta collect elderberries to make my arrow. Like, I don't see, and I understand why people do it, because I'm talking about this because I've played all these games. And I'm gonna do it when I'm in the game, but I hate myself and everyone for it while I'm doing it. Do we need that? Like, can we just have, like, instead of 120 hours, cut it in half, cut all the bloat out, make everything unique. Like, and picture if you're playing this, and I get that there's an element in design that you have to cut and paste. So the question I always wonder is, why don't they say, how can I make this? So you go into that dungeon. Is there a story element in there? Is there a cave where you find something you completely didn't expect that I can do that makes you feel like, oh, I'm not doing Cave 10B that's purple instead of blue or whatever?
The downfall of Elden Ring. There's a few downfalls, right? I'll go through them as soon as I've played the bloody thing to the end. I might as well boast about the fact I completed Elden Ring, and I'm not a great games player. The dungeons, it does actually.
No, it does. I don't know if I could beat it. So yeah.
It does. Let's have some screens as well.
Bravo! Bravo! Woo!
Oh no, they're laughing at me. I pressed the wrong button.
That's a good laugh.
Elden Ring, right? So yeah, the dungeons. So the outcome of every dungeon is at the end of a dungeon there's a boss character to fight. Yeah, and when you fought him, there's like a chest that opens up, and inside is always an item that I don't care about. And once you've done that for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 200, 300 times, one of the downfalls of Elden Ring is that they built, and this other people disagree on this because this is a gameplay style. This goes back to, I think it goes back to this one really, the idea that the developer says, here's a world, and we want you to live that world whichever way you want. So Elden Ring has two ways of playing it. You can play it with swords and shields, and you can play it with magic. And they have spent, I haven't played the previous games, but they have spent some time working on the magic in this game. And there's millions of different spells, and there's millions of different potions and things to do, right? And the whole game, to me, seems centered, it seems to be skewed towards the idea of using magic in this magic world. Unfortunately, I got a big sword and completed the whole game by bashing people really hard with a big sword. I never cast a single spell. I never used any magic. And every reward for every dungeon or everything I ever did would be someone going, here's some magic. And every single time, I would almost throw the controller at the screen because I had two massive swords and I didn't have any means to cast magic. So there's a whole gaming system which someone else will say, but that's good because other people get to use the magic. But
then tailor it to the people who play the... Like, shouldn't you then, if you're a magic user...
Give me some different rewards.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what's the point? It's almost like the game should work out. They should go, hang on. Makira number 6 is using two colossal swords. Dual wielding, power stancing, two colossal swords. Any Elden Ring player will know what I'm on about, right? Makira number 6 is dual power stance wielding, two colossal swords. Perhaps we shouldn't, after 100 hours, keep rewarding him with a spell that he'll never use. But no, they don't care. They don't respect my time. So often, I had to think, is it fun?
Do you ever catch yourself yelling at your television? So you're a grown man, you've lived your life, you learn lessons and wisdom, and then I catch myself. I say this sometimes. I just go, "Oh, you!"
Yes,
I say
Elden
that to
Ring. Yes,
I say that to my TV. I'm down here by myself, and I'm saying, and I say it like I got some sass on it, like, "Oh, you!" Like it's not even like you. It's like you, like
I can't believe what you're saying. In the first few
Me neither,
bosses
so
in
please
Elden Ring,
bleep it out so I don't...
No, for this reason, right? The first few bosses in Elden Ring, there was one that was like the Erd Tree Watchtower cat or something it's called. It's like it's a stone burial cat thing. It's like in the bottom of a dungeon. It's like a stone statue of a cat that kind of comes at you, right? And I couldn't beat this thing. I must have spent hours trying to beat this thing with my shitty little sword at the time. And I was getting up from the chair and I was going up to the screen. I was touching the screen. I was going, you. I was going, you, you, you. And I was doing this, and I must have been there for a day. Yeah. And then when I eventually beat it, I was like, yes, you, you.
The sad part is once you've done that, and then you go upstairs, and your wife and your kids are like, "Daddy, you woke me up," you know. Nah,
Daddy, did you finally beat that statue of a cat in that dungeon?
Thank God they haven't actually heard me doing that. But my wife will just give me a look like, having fun down there?
It's mental, right? There was a game a few years ago on the Switch called, it was a Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, right? And everyone was saying, it's the greatest game of all time.
I've heard of this.
Vast open world vistas and one of the greatest games of all time. But when I heard two things about it, I thought, I'm not going there, right? The first thing, it's all about cooking and crafting. You've got to keep stopping and cooking.
What did Martha Stewart make these games? Like, why are we cooking and crafting?
As soon as I knew I had to cook, just to survive, I've got to keep cooking. I thought, not playing that. And the next thing was fragile weapons. All the weapons in Zelda's Breath of the Wild, right?
Oh, they
break. So you pick up a sword and you hit it like 10 times, apparently. I haven't played it. Hit it 10 times and it snaps. Like, no. I don't want swords that snap. If I've got my sword for my game,
well,
it's not snapping.
I have to contradict myself a little bit because my favorite open world game, or one of them, my two favorites are Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. And Red Dead Redemption 2 has the thing where you have to like clean your horse and you do chores in the morning. But they do it in such a way that it's to make you feel part of the world. And I would do it. And it's not that it's fun, but it does immerse you in the world because it doesn't feel like a checklist to cover time. They do it in a way that like, it feels like I want to be immersed. And that's why those stupid side quests, like in Red Dead Redemption 2, when you do a side quest, it feels like it's the same as a main mission. They talk to you, you go do something. There's exceptions, but for the most part, they incorporate it into the main game. You know, there's not just some and when they do one of those, my horse run loose, go get it for me. They do it in a way that's funny enough that it's kind of, it's unique because it's funny and it's different.
From what you're saying about immersion then, and the idea that do things that may be considered a chore in real life, but in the game, it's just to immerse you and keep it real. I've never played. How do you feel about these like Animal Crossing kind of games then, where that's the whole game is based on attending to some vegetables on an allotment?
I was going to say I like immersion because it's like cool pretending you're like a warrior or you're a cowboy. But like, I don't ever want to like pretend I have an Etsy page where I do crafts. Like, so that's why I don't understand that one part.
Yeah.
But I totally lost your question.
It's just that you've got whole game genres, right? A game genre where the things that we're moaning about in these open world games, the things I've been moaning about, the chores, the collecting the herbs, or the cooking, or the repairing a broken weapon, or tending to your horse or your goat. That's the whole game. So in like Animal Crossing, you've got to get the character to get out of bed and go and water the vegetables, and then go and talk to Mrs. Miggins and walk around a bit, and then go back to sleep. It's like a Tamagotchi from like the bloody 90s.
I don't really play. I'll play like Civilization, which is different. There's sort of, you're like developing your
Civilization's different.
Yeah, I don't really care for. I'm trying to think if there are any games that like I don't. Yeah, and I guess.
But it sounds like your games have got elements of this in it though. Red Dead Redemption. I've never played it, but if you're tending to your horse
and the
second brushing it or feeding it, whatever. But you're saying it just makes you feel like a proper cowboy because you've got to water your horse.
And I think it has to do with how the developers. I don't think the developers were going. This will stretch out the game, and it's not a major gameplay loop. It's they were thinking, I want to immerse you in this world, so let's add this stuff. Because if you don't do it, it'll just make you feel like you're in the world more. Whereas other games go, like, I remember Farmville. It'll be like, you can plant 3 things of corn, but if you want to get another, just pay us 10,000 coins, which are $10, and then you can plant another thing. And I think what that does is it's like Tetris. When you're lining the things up that you feel good. Me and my wife would play solitaire sometimes, and there's one a day that, and you feel good, you accomplished it. So what's the line between fun and it's playing off an addictive personality? Because social media does this, and that's obviously probably another podcast we're going to talk about, but it's, it's setting your serotonin hit to be this sense of accomplishment, but it's kind of a meaningless thing that you're doing. So how do you balance? So what is the balance? And I think Red Dead Redemption, I think, struck a pretty good balance. I'm playing a more narrative game called Control. I'm replaying from Remedy, who did Max Payne, and I think they strike a really good balance. Because I think, is it fun and is it respecting my time? You're riding 10 minutes to get to your next mission, so you're just literally riding in the world. And the worst is you're just trying to get to your next mission, and people attack you on your way to the and you're like, look, I can beat you, I know it, just leave me alone.
Elden Ring has got that right completely. So one of the virtues of Elden Ring is the fast travel system is brilliant.
Oh yeah.
And when you get to a boss, they have these, they call them Stakes of America, but basically what it is if the boss kills you, which it will do again and again and again, it respawns you basically just outside the boss area. There's no running. Cool. Apparently, the older FromSoft games, you would have a 15-minute run back to get killed by the same boss, or you'd have to go through loads of little minions, loads of other little characters killing you on the way just to get to the boss. And repetition can be a good thing, because that's one of the final things I was going to bring up, really, which was the idea of a gameplay loop. And if you think about Tetris, you press start and you play, and the game is fun from the very first bit, and it's one thing that you do, and you can enjoy it forever. Pac-Man, there's a thing to do, and it's like almost the Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Tetris, like 3 perfect games.
Do you think an open world would be you have to walk to the village to start the Tetris game, and then you get to 2 levels in and it gets really hard, so you have to go level
collect
up
blocks.
There's
blocks everywhere. You got to go and collect them first.
If you get the flat block, it's going to be a lot easier to get that down. You can also get it in the game store for 2,000 duck bills, which is our payment. I like that they don't call it and let me do a quick rant. I used to love sports games, and I literally just stopped playing them. I used to play MLB The Show. It's a baseball game, one of the best ever made. And I remember playing it like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you go, man, I can't wait till graphics get so good. And they used to do things where they're like, you're the GM, you could set hot dog prices, you could do, that was old Madden games. And I'd think, I can't wait till graphics get so good that I can be immersed. And now they've literally become an online casino. Like, people get something called stubs. And there's a game mode where you only have like 7 players. You collect through baseball cards. And what you do with these stubs is you buy baseball cards, and there's a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting a really good player. Yeah. And no, if people like that, have fun. But then if you're just playing a franchise and your dream is to just like control your team and make it, they literally haven't paid attention to it in 10 years. Like, you play it and a cobweb goes by, and if something breaks, they're like, well, I hope maybe we'll fix it next year. And it's
like
just so sad.
It's the EA Sports thing, isn't it? Where they created a football game or a baseball game or a John Madden type game years ago, and each year there's just the yearly update, which doesn't even necessarily change the game engine. It's like, and all the fans will buy it, and then it feeds back to your microtransaction thing, where the FIFA games now are notorious for it. The game may be $60 or whatever, but they kind of expect you to spend a couple of thousand.
Oh yeah, because you get the special edition that's $200, and then what happens is they don't. It's not that everyone buys it; it's that there's 10% of players get their mom's credit card and put down like a lot of money to do it. And I would even say this, as disturbing as that is, that it's a casino for little kids, and that's disturbing, and I'm against it. If they at least paid attention to the stuff, because if you want to play a sport, you want to play a soccer game or like football, they call it, or NFL or baseball. When I was a kid, it's like, I want to be either the player or I want to be the general manager or the coach. So create a world as much like the world, as you can, and that's going to be immersive and fun. and they have the means to do that now. But from the company's perspective, it's like, yeah, but I'm printing money by getting little kids to gamble. Why would I do that? And the open world games, I get it, because people play these games and it's easy to make. Because if you think about it from a management, if I'm going to really like get in and on the rails missions that make you feel different every time, how much manpower and time is that going to take? Where if I can, and I say copy paste joking, but the truth of it is they write an algorithm where they do procedurally generated worlds and parts where they just go, okay, and then it's just the computer does it. And I'm not saying there isn't hard work that goes into it, but I'm saying it's more they get more profit out of making it a mile wide and a puddle deep, because it's just easier, and it's easier to create a template that you can then feed things into than it is to say, is the player experiencing new things and having fun and getting story elements all at the same time. And maybe I'm an old man yelling at the clouds, but it just seems like it's going away. With there are exceptions. Jedi Fallen Order is a Metroid kind of game, how they design it, which means there's levels you go into and you can't go into this level until you unlock this ability, and then you can go back. But that game, when you play it, feels handmade, and you only fight other people with the lightsaber. You're fighting, but other like duels, you do like 5 of them in the game, but they're all memorable and they're all different and they're all different approaches to it, and it feels impactful. And you go, yes, when you go back to play it, it's interesting. You don't feel like, oh, I'm fighting another Jedi light. It's that guy, but he's got a blue outfit on instead of green. And look, there are stormtroopers throughout the regular game, and you have to do that to a certain extent. Ubisoft, that's another thing they do, where when you're playing an ancient game, you don't notice it as much with the sword warriors, but you're playing like sort of in the 1800s, and everyone has the same color outfit, and there's 5 different guys, but that's the whole enemy gang, and you fight 5 different guys through the whole thing.
It's like Elden Ring has a bit of a problem with reused bosses and things. So you'll come across a unique boss at the bottom of a dungeon. Some weird creature will come and you think, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then about 20 hours later, you'll encounter the same boss in a field. And it just takes a bit of, oh, there it is again. And then you'll see it another 5 times. And you think, oh, by the end of it, you're like, oh, okay. There's no real uniqueness here. It's just cut and paste. And then we're back to, would it just be better to have a smaller map, guys? Just to stop bragging about how big the Elden Ring map is. Just make it a bit smaller and don't reuse the same boss 50 times. Just let me fight him once.
And what if you were going somewhere and you genuinely didn't know what was going to happen? You go into a woods and it's like, what's going to be here? Instead, you're going to encounter the same house, the same trees, the same fort.
Yeah, it is like that. Elden Ring is like that. It is like that. The same kind of, they've got ruins, like ruins of churches and things, but the ruins are everywhere. They're cut and paste ruins.
Yeah, and you're just gonna get
and all the ruins have got a staircase going down to a boss battle thing with a chest that when you open it gives you a spell, which I then just go F you to the screen every time. Hey, Bill, should my title say a mile wide and a puddle deep, not a mile high? Let me just check.
I was like, I haven't said anything to make me ashamed yet.
No, let me just check that I haven't. Hang on.
Kids at home.
Oh no, it's not you. It's not you. It's me. It's not you. It's me.
I was gonna say, kids at home, try to have the sort of friend that will, when you make a punctuation or spelling error, will put it as the top bar of your podcast.
For those that can't see the podcast, I appear to have made a mistake in massive letters at the top. I mean, I could change that title. I could. In fact, like maybe I have changed it and no one knows what I'm talking about. In fact, you know what? I think I will just leave it. What's wrong with that? A mile high and a puddle deep. Doesn't matter.
Well, what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. When people start the podcast, there's going to be people who realize it if they watch it immediately.
And
they're going to go, these idiots put a mile high and they're never going to, and then surprise, we know. We figured it out. Smart ass.
So, overall, I think the way that open worlds are going,
I think I'm out.
Is it fun?
I think with some exception, I'm out. I like to do spring cleanings in my life every now and again, and I've been doing social media and video games lately, and I still like video games, but I used to always play open world, and I just think it's gotten to a point where unless it's a very rare exception, I think I'm gonna stop. If I tell you this, when I hear a developer go, they have Gotham Knights, and I used to love the Arkham games, and the developer goes, "We want you to make your own stories." That's a code word for shit. It's shit. We didn't want to make, you know. So I think I'm gonna stay away. That's yeah.
I'm with you. I think I'm with you on that. No, I'm not, because I've just started playing another one, the bloody Xenoblade thing. Oh no! And every footstep I take, there's another herb to collect. What is it with herbs? No one in real life. You don't go round collecting herbs. I don't stop in the pavement and oh look, there's another dog end. Oh, another dog end, dog butt. There's another cigarette butt. Oh, look, there's some grass. Oh, look, there's a dog turd. I'll take that. I'll fill my pockets. When in real life, you do not walk around filling your pockets up with shit.
In real life,
although I did pick up a 20p piece in an arcade 2 days ago. But don't tell anybody. Yeah.
In an arcade? You're going to arcades?
I was in an arcade and I picked up.
What's happening in England now? I didn't know that.
It's just something.
Do you play Elden Ring in an arcade? How many quarters did it take you to defeat Elden Ring in the arcade?
Can you?
I just picture a line of little kids, and you're just like, oh, and it takes you 2 weeks.
Bill, I would advise that you play Elden Ring because I think it's that good. But if it was an arcade game that you had to pay money for, you would need $1 million because it's hard.
Not sexually though.
It's not sexually, but I think all of these games, it really depends on how much you do like picking herbs.
If you're a botanist or if you have a little store on Etsy, I would highly recommend these open world games. You will get more crafting than you know what to do. You might get ideas on stuff you can put in your Etsy store.
I think I'm going to make because I had to type spiel in to both the audio and the video version of this, especially the audio version. I think the spiel might be open world games are going to be very enjoyable if you are a botanist. Because you'll probably find that botanists don't play these games, but they should.
They should.
They should. Maybe
all the developers are botanists, and that's why they're trying to insipidly slip into crafting interests. I
might check that out because there's got to be something to this crafting botany thing that's going on. You're right. They couldn't earn money doing their botany, so they became Japanese software developers.
Whenever a new Batman game comes out, I hope I have to make my shoes.
God, you're right though.
Be the Dark Knight. Make his shoes. Like, what the hell is Alfred for if I'm making shoes? What's Alfred doing while I'm gathering shoe leather after I beat up the Joker's thugs?
For the next Batman Arkham Knight's adventure, I don't want to have to be a cobbler.
Isn't that a villain in Spider-Man, the cobbler?
The cobbler. There was too many in Spider-Man 3, and I think one of them, there was the Sandman, the cobbler.
Yeah.
And the cobbler. They haven't thought, you could have someone who just, he gets into the battle, and no matter who's there, Thor, the Hulk, whatever, he just slips his shoes off and throws them at them.
No, I think
the cobbler.
No, here's the cobbler, right? So the hero's fighting, but his shoes are too tight. And they can't, and they go to the cobbler and they go, "Do you have the shoehorn thing to get?" And he goes, "No."
He doesn't have it.
I'm not gonna do it. The villainy.
Oh,
you can't fight crime if your feet hurt.
That is the ultimate villainy. He has the means to make your feet feel better, but he chooses not to.
You didn't respect me enough now. On that bombshell, over and out. Better call Saul.